the heart of America, I'm Steve Gruber, ready to fight for you in the foxhole of freedom, giving you better analysis and insight than anyone else, shining a spotlight into the darkness of the political media industrial complex. It's a real swamp. This is the relentless pursuit of truth. Thank you for being here. Here are three big things you need to know to start your day today. Number one, a mass shooting in Philly with a suspect they don't want you to know about because he's a cross-dressing Black Lives Matter activist who murdered 5. Hard to blame white supremacy for that one, but I'm sure they'll try. Number two, the war between Zuckerberg and Musk spilling into the great wide open. Challenges for cage fights and Facebook looking to destroy Twitter and social media altogether. My money, by the way, is on Musk. On both. And number three, never miss a chance to gaslight. That's the theme of the socialists running Washington these days. The truth matters less today than at any time in my lifetime, it appears. With the political narratives and fall guys far more important than God or country or anything else. But before we get to all the gaslighting, let's figure out what is going on with cocaine found inside the West Wing of the White House. That's right, the Secret Service trying to figure out how the illegal street drug ended up in the most secure building in the world. Well, I mean, it's easy to think that all lines lead back to Hunter Biden. I mean, that would be the perfect snow job from the inside, right? The shortest line between points A and B could likely lead right up the first junkie's nose. The first junkie. It's no secret that when Hunter Biden was committing felonies with illegal gun purchases, human trafficking, and prostitutes, he was addicted to crack cocaine. Not much of a stretch to point our noses in his direction again with this new discovery. I mean, line it up. I mean, we've now seen pictures of Hunter driving 172 miles per hour down the highway, a selfie of his own dashboard of his Porsche on his way to Las Vegas in 2018. And on that same trip, he ended up with prostitutes, passed out with a crack pipe in his mouth. That, according to the pictures and posts found on the infamous laptop that Hunter was too stoned to remember to pick up from the repair shop. That happened about a year later. So, the Secret Service, we're told, trying to hunt down the source of the blow in the White House. We'll keep you posted. I'm sure if you ask Joe Biden, the coke in the White House is most likely Donald Trump's fault and likely Russian disinformation too. Or maybe it's how they get the old man jacked up to roll into the day each day so he doesn't look so weak, frail, and incompetent. Anyway, the gaslighting crew really had a big week last week after the Supreme Court handed down several key decisions in big cases on religious liberty and freedom of speech, ruling in favor of a former mailman, saying he refusing to work on Sundays was okay. And a Colorado web designer could not be forced to make sites for things she has religious objections to. Then, of course, the court struck down President Biden's attempt to buy $400 billion of votes from those with student loans, but that, too, was kicked to the curb. And the left gaslighted all of it, calling it all an attack on young people, demanding the court be expanded. But the big bomb was the Supreme Court ruling in favor of Asian students that had been denied admission to Harvard and the University of North Carolina. So those schools could pick people of color, but not their color. Not their color to pursue affirmative action programs, you see. The Supreme Court rejected the idea that race should play a role, any role, in college admissions, striking it down as unconstitutional. Why? Because it is. But that was just another opportunity to light the blowtorch of gaslighting from AOC to Democrat members of the Senate to Joe Biden himself. They all attacked the Supreme Court, and Republicans too, claiming the decision was just white supremacy and racism, masquerading as an opinion from the nation's high court. Of course, it doesn't matter how many cases the left wins, like the right for gay marriage. Whenever they lose one, they lose their collective minds. Happens every time. A midget mentally, but a master at gaslighting, as I just mentioned, is AOC. She's openly hostile in declaring war on the Supreme Court because she doesn't like some of the rulings that get handed down. Listen to this.
I believe that if Chief Justice Roberts will not come before Congress for an investigation voluntarily, I believe that we should be considering subpoenas. We should be considering investigations. We must pass much more binding and stringent ethics guidelines where we see members of the Supreme Court potentially breaking the law, as we saw in the refusal, with Clarence Thomas to recuse himself from cases implicating his wife in January 6th. There also must be impeachment on the table. We have a broad level of tools to deal with misconduct, overreach, and abuse of power. And the Supreme Court has not been receiving the adequate oversight necessary in order to preserve their own legitimacy. And in the process, they themselves have been destroying the legitimacy of the court, which is profoundly dangerous for our entire democracy.
Yeah, profoundly dangerous for our entire democracy. No, you are. It is hard, however, to target the court when it was the left, including the president himself, and then Speaker Nancy Pelosi, who said Joe Biden, for example, could not forgive student loans. It's not possible. And that's one of the things they're going crazy about. Oh, my God. These Republicans, these racists have struck down student loan forgiveness. Well, he did it several times, but here's one example of Joe Biden back in 2019 rejecting the entire idea of forgiving student debt because he doesn't have the power to do it. Listen.
But to come along and say you're going to fund a $35, $34, $40 trillion plan in 10 years, $1.7 trillion in student debt will be forgiven for all universities. I can understand. I think we can get to the point we can have 4-year public universities covered. But why should, in fact, these people out here pay for the fact that my kids had a significant debt, but they went to Yale and they went to Penn and they went for incredibly high tuitions? Why should that be free?
Why should that be free? He also said he doesn't have the legal authority to do it. Now, in the Supreme Court's ruling, written by Chief Justice John Roberts, the comments from Nancy Pelosi, these comments you're about to hear, were cited by the Chief Justice. Why? Because she says the same thing. They don't have the authority to do this. Listen.
People think that the President of the United States, is this more on the subject and you ever want to know? Will you let me know? People think that the President of the United States has the power for debt forgiveness. He does not. He can postpone, he can delay, but he does not have that power. That has to be an act of Congress.
It has to be an act of Congress. So how can they say that and then change position to attempt buying votes? Why? They're Democrats. Buying votes is part and parcel for what they do and who they are. Use your money, taxpayer money, to buy votes from other people. Here's $400 billion to buy votes. And they hope that by having the Supreme Court reject what they already knew was unconstitutional. Democrats already knew this was unconstitutional. Now they're hoping that this rejection will somehow push young voters to the polls next year. Young voters won't even remember this next year. They won't remember it by the end of the day. So that's part of the plan. Bait and switch, gaslight, mislead. It's all part of the deal. And we're going to continue with this conversation. Good to have you here after the 4th of July weekend. Hope you had a great weekend. I did. We'll talk about it in a bit. Hope you did as well. I'll be right back. It's the Steve Gruber Show.